But right now, I want to tell you about our next guest is a world-renowned speaker, coach, and expert on resilience, leadership, and peak performance. Drawing from his experiences as a silver medalist in the 1984 Olympics, a two-time Grey Cup champion, and a successful business coach, he helps individuals and teams push beyond their limits and thrive in the face of challenges.
We welcome to the start the author of Get Comfortable Being Uncomfortable, a powerful guide to overcoming adversity and achieving lasting success. Former Winnipeg Blue Bomber offensive lineman and coach of the University of Manitoba wrestling team, Bob Molle. Bob, good morning.
Thank you very much.
It's an honor.
Nice to be here. Get to back with my Winnipeg family.
Well, that's great. It's an honor to speak with you. Grew up a huge fan of the Blue Bombers and, of course, a huge fan of you and your exploits on and off the football fields. In so many ways we could go with this discussion. But for longtime Bomber fans like me, talk about, if you would, your time in Winnipeg, not only as a football player, but as mentioned, ultimately a two-time CIAU, now CIS, Coach of the Year.
Well, I was pretty lucky. I was extremely fortunate around great people. Like I flipped on both sides. You got to think the personnel. Like I don't think I blocked anybody the whole time, my whole career there in Winnipeg, because I had Walby down. He'd take on two or three guys, right? And it was so fortunate that as a Shenley Award, him and I got along so well. And then we had Lau Bauer in the middle. I had Steve Rhoda Huskers. There were some great ones, Nick Benjamin. And we had the same core lineup. And every other year I was in the Grey Cup. So and I was drafted. I was one of the few people that got drafted by, in the first round, had my whole career there, started my family. All my kids were born there. And I retired a Blue Bomber too. So I never wore any other helmet. So it was like a Cinderella career.
And we mentioned you were a silver medalist at the 84 Olympics as a wrestler, super heavyweight wrestler. So we're curious to know what led you to the world of wrestling.
Well, I grew up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So the background of it was, I don't think anybody in Saskatoon starts their career without a pair of skates. Before you're walking, you have a set of skates on you. So I was playing hockey. I'd been drafted junior hockey. Actually, an old team named Billings Bighorns back in the day. So I had to make a decision, was going to go for hockey, but I was wrestling at the same time in high school and playing football. And because I had the two other sports in high school, I stayed with those two and just continued them on. So after getting recruited to Simon Fraser University out of high school, and they gave me two-sport scholarship, which had never been done before. It was a natural where I just had great coaching, again, great environment, great everything to get to the Olympics, which was my dream. At 24, I think at 25, I already had an Olympic medal and I already had a Grey Cup ring, which, I was the only person in the world that had that at that time. And it was pretty phenomenal. Just being around great people and the relationships that I had, I was very fortunate.
Now, we could do an hour-long program on Canada's greatest athlete. Who was Mean Gene Kiniski, and how did he shape your life?
Oh, that's a loaded story. So Nick, his son, is my best buddy. We've been together since we were 18, actually. And him and I wrestled together at the Canadian National Championships, and he recruited me to Simon Fraser. So I didn't even know who Gene Kiniski was at the time. But this is a crazy story. Don't have enough minutes on this one. But Gene, obviously, I got introduced to Gene when I went out to Simon Fraser, and I would live there in the off season. He lived in Blaine, Washington. And Gene was like my second father. So he would get up, make us train neck exercises every morning. It was just like, but the great thing was, unfortunate thing, before the Olympics, like 18 days before the Olympics, I was training with it was an Olympic world champion at the time named John Tente. Went on to WWF to be the Earthquake, but he was like 365 pounds, right, back in the day. And I had injured my back. And unfortunately, 18 days before the LA Olympics, I was having surgery for my back. I had a ruptured disc in my back, and they they had to get that rupture out. So I had serious back operation 18 days before. And Gene was the one that drove up from the States every morning to talk to me, to get me out of bed, to get me walking. And, if I wouldn't have had someone like that in my back pocket every day going, come on, Bob, let's do a couple more steps. Come on, Bob, let's go. Every morning he drove up from the States into the Royal Columbian Hospital. Not that those memories or relationships are important, but he was the one that said, come on, we can do it. If anybody, we can do it. So I spent 1 week in the hospital, 1 week at Simon Fraser, just under that. Flew down to LA. I had five matches and ended up in the Olympic final. So, if you don't, it's kind of the old rule of thumb, surround yourself with great people. I was very fortunate to have great people around me.
Bob Molle is our guest. He's a former Winnipeg Blue Bomber, two-time Grey Cup champion, coach of the University of Manitoba Bison wrestling team. I think you took on that job. Were you 25, 24? How old were you, Bob, when you started coaching the Bisons?
Yeah, 25 when I took over the University of Manitoba wrestling team, and that was quite we just raced. My wife was articling at the time. And we just had a kid. And then I took over the wrestling team. Bad enough, I was kind of going full time when, all the training for the Bombers. And then I'd race the practice twice a day for the University of Manitoba wrestling team. But turned the team around in 3 years, had some great guys recruited actually, when I went on road trips, I recruited kids all from Ontario and stuff like that. And 3 years later, we won a national championship. And 2 years later, we won another national championship. So had some great people, great personalities that brought a team together. So it was quite enjoyable.
You were doing the Brian Dobie thing before Brian Dobie was doing the Brian Dobie thing.
Well, Brian Dobie, that goes back a few days because Brian and he was coaching, I think at Churchill back in the day. He would ask me to, as soon as he went to University of Manitoba, I'm thinking this is like 35 years ago. How long did he coach at U of M? And he would phone me up. Bob, can you recruit this kid for me? Bob, can you help me with this? I'd pick up the phone. I knew Brian from way back in the day. So, relationships, they're not important, are they? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
No, and that gets us to talking about the book. But one more thing, if you don't mind, Bob, on your connection to Winnipeg. I happen to be not next door neighbors, but I'm neighbors with one of your former teammates, James Murphy, and we often talk.
Great guy.
He's wonderful, and so we often talk about just how many players from the '80s still call Winnipeg home, and so just talk maybe about that after football, and then the idea of understanding how you could parlay your notoriety and your football career into one in business.
Well, it's a loaded question and loaded answer. So, but the beautiful thing was and still is, I've had a consulting business for close to 25 years. So I walk into companies and I just put teams together. I'm just being very candid with you. So I get the right people in the right seats, get the right bums in there. And I have a number of companies that I work for in Manitoba. So I'm back there every quarter, you know what I mean? And then I go pick up a game like Wade Miller was one of my wrestlers back in the day. So you know how old he was. He was at Sturgeon Creek High School. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yep. When he was 18 years old. So, and I used to take him in and he wasn't too flexible at the time. And I'd drill him on that part of it. And he still remembers that. And so you just got the relationships. In fact, when I go to Winnipeg, 99% of the time, I never grab a hotel unless I get in super late or something like that. I'm staying with some friend. You know what I mean? I got so many relationships there. Everybody's, hey, Bob, come on in. We got supper ready for you. It's just like, it's my home. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't, I got relationships. So I'm back there every quarter. I'll pick up a football game. I got a buddy that picks me up. And, 6 o'clock in the morning, we go for a workout. I ran into Rod Hill last time I was there at a gym, and we're staying there. And then I got a bike group. We just keep active and, just giggle. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's all like fantastic memories. But I would say if there's one strong bond, it would be the relationships I still have.
Well, and I think that goes into and plays to this idea of getting comfortable about being uncomfortable. So before we let you run here, why is it important to push our own boundaries and just touch on, some of the things you preach in the book?
Well, this is there's a whole bunch of things in the book, and it's an embarrassing story to tell at the same time. But actually, that quote comes, and everybody's plagiarized it, because I actually bought the domains for it 15 years ago, and I actually own the trademark for that too. But everybody's kind of R&D'd it. I call Rob and duplicate. Everybody's grabbed my quote and kind of ran with it. But it comes from an Eastern philosophy. And I had a great mentor way back in the day. Unfortunately, I lost him about 15 years ago to cancer. And he was one I studied in Eastern philosophy. I just kind of learned different stuff. And I took a course with, he was a prof in Calgary at the time. And I took a course with him. And at the end of it, I'm having a coffee with him. And he looks over at me. And I said, if you could summarize all the stuff you've done in the last year, he says, how would you summarize all the information you gave me? And he goes, Bob, in an Eastern philosophy, it means get comfortable being uncomfortable. I just went like this. My eyes just about broke out of my head. I go, you serious? And that's when I bought the domains way back then, because if you'll only develop your full potential if you get uncomfortable. And that's been there for thousands of years. It's nothing I invented. So I brought the philosophy forward. I just told different things where I did uncomfortable things. And I go, look what happened. Look what happened. You know what I mean? Sitting watching the opening ceremonies as the Open Olympics, and you just came out of back surgery is not a comfortable thing to go through. It's not that I recommend it for anybody, but you'll never get to your potential unless you're uncomfortable. And that's where all the growth happens, is when you're uncomfortable. Public speaking, people say they'd rather die than public speak. So, there's so many things and so many positives. And relationships, people don't go out of their way to build new relationships. And look at me, you know what I mean? I've been most fortunate, luckiest person in the world, because I just got good relationships all over the place. So yeah, it's those uncomfortable times that's where you get your growth.
We'll have to have you back, Bob. Appreciate you sharing some stories, some insight, and yeah, let's dig in deeper a little bit more with this getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Trademark, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Appreciate it.